Time. Plus it was overturned. I think that seed had problems of it came out very late. The trash wasn't very clear with how you deal with it all the time, and it was also overturned. And I think that those three things made the dungeon very difficult. But I think that if you sent people back in time and Seat was released today, I think that people would be people would definitely be a lot better at Seat than they were at the time. Whether or not I don't think the dungeon would be fair. I still don't think the dungeon would be fair, but I think it would be a lot more reasonable. Where was this dungeon? Here it is. Okay, I just forgot what island it was on. But I do think it. I think it was a bit before its time. I think it's the biggest thing that kind of hurts Seat. Like a lot of the trash. Stop the Ethereals and release these beasts back. I did not get. We should be thankful that I knew it was in Argus. I actually fly to all the keys, man. There are some people that always get summoned to every single key. I am not one of those people. All right. So.
Something foul is stalking these grounds, heroes.
Oh God, I forgot about this. Holy shit. Okay. So this dungeon started off with like perhaps one of the biggest make or break pulls I've ever seen. I forgot how ridiculous this was. So these subjugators did just freakish damage to your tank. This whole entire pack did just absurd damage. And you had to do it in one pull because if you separated it out into multiple pulls, you wouldn't be able to you wouldn't be able to kill the pack at all. So you did this whole entire thing in one pull, and then you would mass grip all the mobs on top of one another because of the suppression field cast. Oh, okay, I actually forgot what the ability was that was so bad in here. It's because of that suppression field cast. And so you would mass grip all the mobs in, immediately leg sweep. The moment the leg sweep is expiring, you had to have trees down. And it was a massive deal that you had to have trees. What did suppression field do? Wow. Okay. So it places a suppression field on random enemies, and it decreases movement speed by 50% for 10 seconds. Additionally, if the enemy moves while being suppressed, they explode, inflicting 150 shadow damage to themselves and all allies within 6 yards. So that's why it wouldn't be cast. Like, that's why you couldn't have it cast on you, because it would just blow up your whole entire group. Or it would insta-kill your tank, basically, is more or less the issue. And so, out of the leg sweep, and it had like a 20-second recast or something. It was something like a pretty long recast on it. And so, out of the leg sweep or AoE stun, you could Shadow Fury too. That was used pretty commonly. You had to have trees. Trees were pretty much mandatory for this first pull. And you couldn't just, like, do this one pack at a time. So, then you would kill off this pack, or you would wipe and zone out. There was no in between. And you would do some like hibernation. I mean, you would pull these. Okay, so basically you pull these void discharges is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if you'd call these hibernation pull or not. So you're pulling a bunch of these void discharges. People are zoning out of this key at this moment, by the way. Everybody's going out and coming back in with different talents, different like you wouldn't zone out for gear at this time because you can still swap gear. Everybody's zoning out for different talents though at this point because you're about to have to fight this boss. And so while you're doing that, the rest of your party are just fighting these void discharges that, again, these are just mobs that melee you. They don't do anything. They just melee you. And so you kill them off, and now you're ready to fight the Rawl, which I don't remember a ton about this boss. So I remember that there is an intermission phase where you have to go down. Okay, so actually, there's an intermission phase where you have to go downstairs. You have to kill an ad in the intermission phase downstairs. Up top, there are these void discharge slimes spawning, and you have to kill these. And then the person has 20 or 30 seconds downstairs to be able to kill off their ad. If they don't get their ad killed off in time, then you're pretty boned. And so the biggest thing with the downstairs ad is whenever it does die, you get an extra action button, and you would pop the extra action button, it would stun the boss, and then we take increased damage. And I think that's functionally how the boss worked. And I remember there were times where I would get too many of them in a row and not have the appropriate amount of cooldowns to be able to deal with it. But I don't remember what CDs it was that I was using on them. It's been so long that I don't remember. Maybe it was face tanking it that was too hard. I want to say that there was an issue with face tanking the mob. And so if I didn't have trees up for it, it would just melee me to death or something. Because there were ads downstairs too, from what I remember, that that could cause problems. But there was something weird about this boss. It's been a very long time, and there was a downstairs phase that you had to kill the ads, and then you pop an extra action button. And I do remember if I didn't have trees for the ads that were also downstairs that I needed to tank, then I would just die. So this boss, this is probably the hardest opening segment of any dungeon that you've ever seen, just because of how. So a lot of times pulls aren't very technical with like millisecond timing. This was a pull that first pull was a pull that was the most technical down to like a millisecond timing. All right. And so then after you kill the boss, you have to wait for RP to happen. And so while you're doing that, you're going to pull this pack. You would pull this pack on the right. You would never pull any of these mobs. So you would pull this pack on the right here. You would kill this off while you're waiting for this RP to start. These guys are running up here, doing their thing. There is some trash over in this area, but you have to wait for this door to get opened. And so instead of doing that, you would just take the more efficient approach, and you would pull those 3 mobs like through this doorway, killing them off like near this area while these guys are sitting here talking about nothing. Oh, shit. I forgot about this. And in very typical Legion fashion, somebody would forget to talk to this person, and you would be late on getting your door open. This is very, very typical for this dungeon. I'm surprised that I'm playing it exactly how you played it back then. All right. So how you have to do this is you have to kill off these Rift Wardens, right? Are the Rift Wardens marked? You have to kill off the Rift Wardens in a specific order. And you don't know the order where the Rift Wardens are going to be based until, like, after you kill off the first one. Because there's, like, multiple spots that they can spawn. There's a spot that they can spawn that's over there. I want to say there's a spot that's, like, over here to the right. You're able to, like, open up your map and you're able to see, like, where they are at that current moment. Oh my god, I forgot about this. This had to be the... Oh my god, I'm having flashbacks. So, after every so often, they would spawn these circles on you, and it would throw out these little aberrations that would follow you around. And it would, like, break stealth and just put you in combat permanently. God, I hadn't thought about that in so long. That was... Yeah, that was a terrible design. Maybe I have to take back about what I say about people would be better at this. I think people would still be better at this dungeon, but man, this has a design where you have these aberrations spawning on all of your players and just combating them the whole entire time was terrible. So you do this Rift Warden pull, right? You do it with all the void discharges. I remember this pull being fairly difficult, but I don't remember if we played it with other mobs. I can't ever believe that we played it with the subjugators. The subjugators would never be it. Maybe there was something else that we played it with at the time, but I can't remember off the top of my head. It wasn't something that was like super notable. But I do remember these Rift Wardens being pretty tough. Okay, so instead of getting... So... I don't want to explain this. The path that you really want for this dungeon would involve you playing this Rift Warden. You would immediately want to go right to this side. And the reason that you want to go right is because you don't want to be backtracking. And so with this Rift Warden here, you're going to have to backtrack. But in reality, this route that I just got was incredibly bad. I also had this Voidling on me, attached to me while I'm in stealth, by the way. And now it is just proxied mobs. I'm in fucking Seat of the Triumvirate hell. Okay. This was another thing, is that those Rift Stalkers, even if you were in stealth, would proxy other mobs. And so it's just something that you had to think about. So we had this Voidling following us. I really don't want to proxy anything else. You have to make sure that you're pulling it through correctly. And so now we're going to this other Rift Warden, right? And it may look like it's a straight shot to this Rift Warden over here, correct? It isn't. Fake news. There are invisible packs. So that patrol, it's similar-ish to Junkyard, except 100,000 times worse. I wonder if on MDT it shows like where the patrol went, because I remember the patrol being massive. See the Triumvirate. Where am I? This is a normal pack. I don't know where the patrols were anymore. But man, yeah, there were some invisible packs and it was pretty brutal. Alright. So you kill these void discharges. You kill this other Rift Warden. I'm trying to remember what exactly this Rift Warden did. It's been a hot minute, but I do remember the Rift Wardens were fairly difficult. You would pull this Rift Warden down here, because at this point you're sweating for time. In blast. Is it that he had a bunch of casts? I guess the leash range on this thing is a lot shorter than I remember it being. I don't remember the leash range being that short, but it had a kick and you couldn't tank it in the purple stuff. Okay, this makes sense. So now we have the last Rift Warden to deal with, and this one is actually not in a bad spot. I think you only had to kill 3, and then it would activate the second boss of the instance, which like it would be over here. So we're just gonna kill this guy. I want to say it spawned a bunch of shit on the ground too, but this is not a dungeon I'm like the most familiar with. I am fairly familiar with how people did this key. All right, so now you got all this shit here. So this pull was this was a big pull that was done fairly frequently in these keys. So you would do this pack, and this pack together with all of your CDs, right? Holy fuck, those bombs. I forgot about these. And so you would mass grip these, and you would try to blow up all of this crash at once. And if more than anything, it was because you had to. It wasn't necessarily because you really wanted to. You needed to clear out this area for this boss. Because there was like a patrol that would cut straight through the middle of the room. And so it was just like pretty efficient to do it like this. But this pull wiped. Okay, so if you didn't wipe to the first pull of the dungeon, this was a pull that I've wiped to 100 times as well. This is probably the second most common pull to wipe to. Jesus, those sky fins. Man, I haven't thought about these. The sky fins did a frontal silence. And so you would clear out a bunch of this trash. You kill every void discharge you can. Oh, here's the trickster. I remember what the mobs did now. Oh my god, it was these tricksters, and they would stun you out of stealth. That's what they did. They would stun you out of stealth, and they would always fucking kill your healer. Where are they in MDT? This is like old MDT, by the way, so don't. And so the tricksters were like, there would be one that would patrol from like here to here. For some reason, I remember there being one from like here to here, but I didn't get combat with it whenever I walked by earlier. So I think I may be too high of a level. Oh, here it is. Look, 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 look. Here's the trickster. And he would stun you out of stealth. And he would always kill your healer. Basically, so like your tank or somebody in your group would like proxy pull it, and then the healer would grab healing thread on the thing while it's still invisible, and then it would always pop out, instant fucking stab your healer to death, and then you're just like, all right, that sucked. But yeah, I guess they're not an MDT anymore, or maybe they never were an MDT. It's hard to say. It's been a very long time. This is MDT not being maintained for Legion. All right, so now we got the second boss of the dungeon, which is a council style fight. So I'm trying to remember exactly what these mobs did. So there was a cat that did leaps. I do remember this. Okay, leaps and frontals that always killed melee. I do remember that. Then there were these bombs. And that's why you had to clear out all of this trash, is because one of these guys spawned these bombs. And so you would try to get these mobs as stacked up as possible. These mobs are grippable and vortexable, by the way. The small dudes. Well, at least they were at the time. H. Maybe it's just Shadewing that was movable. I could have just made that up, though. And so then Shadewing also had a cast, but Shadewing would leap out towards your ranged players and then start casting. So you need to make sure that your ranged were being very aware of the cast itself. And then beyond that, you were trying to stack up as 5 people in melee, not get hit by Dark Fang's frontal, but keep the mobs stacked at all times, just to make sure you were able to deal with it. And then beyond that, the fight, not that intricate. It's not as intricate as I remember it being. You were just trying to make sure that you were stacked up in melee, don't get blown up by the mines, avoid the frontal from Dark Fang. I think more often than not, deaths came to that Dark Fang frontal because it would one hit you. It would just one tap you and you'd die. Yeah, that's that. So now we're going on to the next part of the dungeon. You would always skip pretty much all of this trash that's right here, like all this front trash and stuff like that. You would go around the left side here, and then you would have to hug them. You would have to hug the middle of this. I was a druid, so it wasn't a big deal. But there's a way that you can make it through this path without pulling anything. I wonder if I can do it still, just by like, since I'm high level, I may not be able to pull it in the same way that you would whenever you were like a normal level player. But you would have to walk straight through the middle and not pull anything. And then you would grab these void discharges. You would fight them like here. Again, like I said, void discharge, most valuable mob in this dungeon because it gives you a lot of free count. And then you would have to look at this patrol of this Shadow Weaver, Voidbender, Voidlord pack, and you would determine where you would jump, right? So for this instance, you would probably wait for this patrol. You would either jump down and immediately start fighting these Void Discharges. These Void Discharges are good because it's a good hibernation pack. Or you would jump down to the left here and fight these Flayer pull. And so you would pull the Void Discharges into this Flayer pack. And this is double Voidbender, triple Flayer. These Flayers had a cast, this Dark Flay ability, and it was like stunnable. You would really want to CC the Dark Flay, is the TLDR. And they were unfortunately not stacked, so you couldn't like solar beam them or anything, but you were trying to CC them, kill off one of these flares as soon as possible. That's the most important thing, because having 3 up was like really bad from what I remember. And so you would try to just like nuke one of them as fast as you humanly could, and then you would try to kill off the rest of this pack with time. And so once everything dies, you're going to see the patrol is probably coming towards you. You're going to walk back and pull these void discharges, right? And then like as this patrol passes you, you would walk up and then pull these other void discharges. You wouldn't really... You would want this pack to be the last pull of this room, if at all possible. But you needed this corner specifically to be able to even pull that patrol. So you would come around whenever that patrol passes you. You would come kill these void discharges. Then next you had the next Void Flare pack that you have to deal with, which has a Void Lord in it. The Void Lord would either get... I remember the Void Lord being banished, but I don't remember why the Void Lord is banished. It's been a very long time. So the Conjurer would have to get these Umbral Bolts kicked because the cast did way too much damage to the tank at the time. So you would have to be killing everything. And then you also... That Void Tear ability didn't really do anything. Is this that orb that explodes? I thought that this patrol had the orb. Let me look at this trash. I'm trying to remember. Okay, look at this. You see this thing that's on me right here? So there are these orbs here, and they explode after 20 some odd seconds, but they're line of sightable, and this pillar right here counts as line of sight. And so at the time, we were morons, and we would try to kill those orbs. I don't know where I don't see them, because they definitely were killable. Here it is, Unstable Dark Matter, and it does the collapse, but this collapse is line of sightable, and it would one-shot you if you didn't kill it, and it had insane HP in a 5-second cast. And so you would have to do that. On top of all of this, you have to be spread, because if you saw that circle that was put on me earlier, that would suck all players nearby within like a 10-yard radius. That pull that I just did right there, actually just unplayably bad. You would never play both of those pulls together. And so yeah, then this Void Lord would spawn these circles, and so when the Void Lord is spawning the circles, you would line of sight them. We would always try to kill, at the time, we would always try to kill the Dark Matter circles and dump all of our Windwalker's damage into them, but that was so foolish. I don't know why you would use all of your offensive CDs to try to kill the fucking orb. It was so dumb. Why didn't we just tank the boss on the line of sight spot? I'll never understand. And just line every single one of these. That's one of those things that if I had to go back in time, I would definitely know how to do differently. But at that moment, it was, oh yeah, we just dump all of our resources into these. This will be fine. Yo, THT, thank you so much for the massive raid. We're going through See the Triumvirate, which controversially, I think we were just really bad at this dungeon, but at the same time, there was some really overtuned dumb shit about this dungeon. All right, so next we have the third boss of this instance, and if you guys saw those Soul Flare attendees that I was talking about earlier, this is a boss that, like, whenever Raid Trash will introduce you to a raid mechanic, this was kind of similar to that. The trash in the dungeon was introducing you to kind of how the bosses are going to work. And so now you have 3 of these umbral tentacles, and you would move the boss in between. Oh my god, I fucking forgot that there was a fear on this fight. So this was Kix, the boss. And so you had these tentacles always doing these Void Lash abilities and sucking people. You could take one at a time, but if you got double sucked, you would just die. There's no room for double suck in this world. The world is not long for that. Holy fuck. And so yeah, basically if you got 2 of those on you, you die. You need to make sure that you are kicking them. Actually, you wouldn't even kick them. You never kick the tentacles. You would CC them with other things, such as... I always played Mighty Bash in this dungeon, but I don't remember what row Bash was on at that time. I want to say that was on, like, the Typhoon row. I want to say this was before Typhoon was made baseline. And so you would always play, like, as many single target stuns as you possibly can because of these Umbral Tentacles on this fight. And so you're dealing with the Umbral Tentacles on the fight. You have to be able to CC them. All the while, you're rotating kicks on Viceroy. Some of these Dark Blasts, it was fine to have go through, but he casts this Howling Dark Fear every so often. And so, now you may have seen these Void Tenders spawn. These Void Tenders are bad news. But they're not bad news because, like, they're necessarily hard to kill, although they are pretty healthy. They don't actually do that much. But the reason that they're bad news... Okay, so we have the Entropic Force. I'll talk about the Void Tenders in a second. You have the Entropic Force, which is a pretty hefty pushback. You would normally have the boss tanked about at this spot that he is right now, because then it would be easy to just run against the Entropic Force. So you're maintaining kicks. You're making sure that Viceroy isn't getting off any fears. And now you have these Void Tenders spawn. And they come and channel this ability on the boss. And these Void Tenders have to die within this Eternal Twilight cast. And if they don't die within inside the Eternal Twilight cast, the cast is protected and blows up and kills you. And those ads have pretty large HP. And so you would have to make sure that you would rotate CDs very specifically for those ads. And then beyond that, you would just cleave Viceroy, focusing your CC on the tentacles, hoping that you get 2 tentacles that are really nearby one another. That way you could deal with them. You would always solar beam the far side, because then your melee players or Windwalker Monk, like your melee players, would like to cleave the 2 that were stacked up, and then you just kind of deal with that. Here is where you zone out of the key. You spec full single target. You would respec every single thing that you possibly can to full single target, because now we have a 5.5 minute boss encounter coming up next, with just like a couple packs of trash in between. But with that RP of the dungeon, you would just, it was a natural cadence for you to zone out, get resummoned by a Warlock, and come back in. So then they would start these Voidlings. You would just kill these off. Sometimes I remember these Voidlings not giving count, but I could just be making that up. And so now you have to deal with these 2 Rift Wardens. You realistically couldn't pull 2 of these I want to say you couldn't pull 2 of these at once, although that is maybe just made up. So you would kill off the Rift Wardens, making sure that you're getting Stygian Blast kicks. If you're missing these, your tank's going to probably die. You just have to do... So you have to make sure that you get the kicks, get the second Rift Warden down, and then this Naru boss will spawn.
Such chaos. Such anguish.
And
Anything like it before.
this boss had a pretty intricate dance. Actually was, I don't even know if intricate is the right word. It had a dance. The hard part of this fight is that it just had more HP than it should have. This fight had way more HP than it should have, and every healer always oomed. You always play with the Moonkin, and even then, every healer always ran out of mana on this fight. So, how this dance worked is you would all be standing out here for the... Holy shit, I haven't thought about this in so long. So you'd be standing out here for the first little bit. You would kill off this Rift Warden. I forgot that this boss spawned Rift Wardens. My fucking god. And then you would have to get these soaks, and there was 2 of them at the time. I guess there's only 1 if there's only 1 person in the dungeon, but there were definitely 2. Oh, there's 1 soak per Rift Warden. That's what it is. That's what the answer is. And you're trying to kill off these Rift Wardens as fast as possible, because that portal is spawning these ads perma. And so you're trying to kill off this Rift Warden as fast as humanly possible, spawning these puddles out in the middle of the room, right? And now, after this, you get a vulnerability phase on this boss where your damage is increased damage taken by 200%. And so this is a vulnerability phase for 10 seconds. You're doing as much damage as possible into this fight, right? And so now you're gonna have the boss. It doesn't like explode, but now it just goes into like a normal phase. And so now this boss is, you're going to have to fight off these 2 Rift Wardens. I was going to say the boss is active, but the boss isn't active until you fight off the double Rift Warden. And now the double Rift Warden is pretty sus, because now you have 2 of those circles that you have to spawn, and they would spawn in random spots around the room. Let's see. Okay, so this one is not too bad, because this one is like in a reasonable spot, although this one's bad because you're starting to get the purple puddles beneath you. You could have been out, I could have been out of the purple puddle there for that one, but there are ones that will potentially spawn inside of this shit, and you have to immune them. Like, the tank would always get the ones that are inside the stuff. So for this one, your tank would run across, get inside of this, your range will grab that one that's in the front of the room. Let's see one more set. Let's see if we can get like a really bad set. There's some that are like obscure positions, like fucking in the corners of the room and stuff. And they're also really hard to see because, as you can tell, purple on purple, pretty bad. Where's the other one? Okay, so the other one was right here. And so, yeah. Basically, at this point, you're probably killing off these Rift Wardens, passively cleaving down the little Voidling shitterads. There's going to be another backlash phase coming here momentarily. A lot of the times you had the little shitterads up still for the backlash phase, but you're prioing the boss. Oh, yeah, dude, I forgot about this. You always got, like, one additional set of those Voidlings for this backlash here. All right, so now, boss is stunned again. Taking increased damage once more. You're DPSing, you're DPSing, you're DPSing, you're DPSing. You're owning this boss as hard as humanly possible. This boss is at 70% health. And you are 3 minutes into this encounter already. You were like 2 minutes to 3 minutes into this encounter already. This boss is at 70% HP. And now you have to do the dance that I was talking about earlier. So, as you can see, all of those purple puddles are flying at you, and you just move to the other side of the boss. This isn't really too bad. You would spread out as 5, you would fan out across the boss, so you had to move as little as reasonable. But something you may notice is that this boss looks like it's pulsing AoE. And that's because it is pulsing AoE. It's doing damage to your whole party. Yeah, it's doing damage to your whole party. And now you're 4 minutes into this fight, and this boss is at 40% HP. And your healer is looking dangerously and this boss is still at 40% HP. And you're like, how the fuck are we gonna get through this? The plot twist. You aren't getting through that. This boss is taking 6 minutes, and you were wiping at 1% HP on this fight. Yeah, and ramping, I forgot about this. And this growing darkness, the longer you're in this phase, the more AoE damage it does. Because it has this ramping stacks. I actually had not thought about that in a while. And this fight, you will wipe on this boss at 10% HP so many times because your healer just runs Oom. And this is Legion Holy Pally that's running Oom, by the way. This isn't just like some weird shit. This is Legion Holy Paladin. Where it's like, alright, very cool. But yeah. And then you would wipe, say, fuck this dungeon, type exclamation mark keys in chat, and you would go somewhere else. And the ability for you to be able to kill this boss and time this key was pretty... Interesting. If you timed this key within like 4 key levels of the other dungeons, it was seen as pretty good. Let me see if I can find... let me go find my character real quick. I can show you. So... 732. I want to say I rolled like 30th on this key or something silly. Okay, world 48th on this key, and it was done on a 25. My top key was a 28. And so, like, what was the world first for this key? Damn, people did a 27 in this dungeon. That's wild. But very few people did a 26. A 26 at that time was seen as just astonishingly good. Very, very difficult dungeon. Incredibly overtuned. We were also pretty bad at that moment in time, but there was a lot that was wrong with this key. It was ahead of its time, but in addition to that, it was also very overtuned.